the summer of 1904, the small town of St. Martin, Louisiana, became the setting for one of the most chilling mysteries in Southern history. 41 guests checked into a quiet boarding house at 63 Barrow Street. Men and women from the pine woods of Mississippi, the river towns of Tennessee, and the missionary circuits of Georgia. They came seeking rest, healing, and renewal. Not one of them ever left. No letters were sent, no goodbyes written, no train tickets purchased. Every trace of them simply stopped. For nearly a century, the case filed under number 1904112 was buried in the city archives, sealed by mayoral order. The Swampland Baptist Mission demanded all records destroyed. The police chief resigned 3 days into the investigation. Locals still whisper about the Duvall house, though most only call it by its darker name, the Resting House. What authorities found beneath its floorboards shattered every belief St. Martin held about faith, grace, and the meaning of salvation. And tonight, you'll hear exactly what Clara Duvall did to those 41 souls, and why the town stayed silent for more than 100 years. Before we descend into the shadows of Barrow Street, I have to ask, are you sure you want to know? Because once you do, you'll never hear the word mercy the same way again. If you're still here, then welcome. You're listening to Horrifying. The forgotten room where the past isn't always dead, it just waits to be found. If stories like this fascinate you, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and tell me where you're listening from. I want to know how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin. Clara Duvall's name was once spoken with respect. A widow of French and Creole descent, she lost her husband in the war and served as a nurse through 2 yellow fever outbreaks. People said she could calm a fever with her hands, soothe grief with her words, and brew teas that could ease even the hardest heart. In the spring of 1904, Reverend Abraham Gilroy, a well-known Baptist minister, praised her from the pulpit, calling her home a place where the weary soul may find peace. That moment marked the beginning of what the townspeople would later call the season of miracles. Ministers, missionaries, and church widows came to stay, and few ever left. The house itself was a grand aging structure once used as a wartime infirmary, with heavy brick walls and wide porches draped in moss. Guests said it smelled of lavender and incense. Each evening, hymns floated through the halls as a sweet, smoky mist filled the air. Clara moved among them, like a mother, gentle, calm, knowing. Among her guests was Lenora Kittredge, a young pianist from Baton Rouge. Her sister Amelia, a local school teacher, would later uncover everything. In March, Lenora wrote home describing the house as the most peaceful place I've ever been, saying Clara seemed to know her thoughts before she spoke them. That letter was dated March 15th. It was the last one Amelia ever received. When weeks passed with no word, Amelia grew worried. Lenora was dependable, deeply devoted to their mother. It wasn't like her to vanish. In June, Amelia took the train to St. Martin, carrying a bouquet of yellow roses and a quiet dread she couldn't explain. The house looked peaceful, its garden tidy, its windows open, the air thick with chamomile and something sweet and strange. Clara answered the door, her silver hair neatly pinned, her black dress spotless. "Miss Kittredge," she said softly. "What a surprise." "How can I help you? I'm looking for my sister Lenora," Amelia replied. Clara's smile didn't falter. "Yes, dear Lenora. She's here in a manner of speaking, but she can't receive visitors. She's entered a period of spiritual cleansing. Total silence. The Lord is doing a great work in her soul." Amelia pleaded to see her, but Clara only shook her head. "We mustn't interrupt." Then she gently closed the door. The garden fell silent. No footsteps, no voices, not even the creak of the old house. It was as if the building itself was holding its breath. Amelia walked away, but something in her chest told her the truth. Whatever was happening inside that house, it wasn't salvation. The next morning, she sat in a cafe near the train station, unable to shake Clara's calm, cold words. Her soul is very close to breaking through. It wasn't scripture. It was something else. Something wrong. She needed help, and she knew who to ask. Dr. Josiah Bell, a quiet man who had once been a field surgeon and now ran a small clinic on Vine Street. He was one of the few in St. Martin not enchanted by Clara Duvall. When Amelia arrived, he looked up from his desk and said, "She's not writing you anymore, is she?" He already knew. Lenora had come to him twice that spring, complaining of strange dreams and the feeling that her soul was slipping from her body. He'd found nothing physically wrong. "She never came back," he said. Then he opened a small leather book filled with patient notes, names, symptoms, dates. Over the past 9 months, at least a dozen former guests of Clara's house had come to him with the same complaints: fatigue, confusion, memory loss, and above all, the inability to leave. They all said the same thing, he murmured, flipping pages. "I can't leave yet. I'm almost finished." But none could explain what they meant. "What do you think she's doing to them?" Amelia asked. He closed the book and looked at her grimly. "I think she's drugging them. Opiates mixed with local herbs. Angelica root, maybe datura, enough to keep them calm, pliable. After a while, the mind gives way. You stop asking to leave." Amelia's voice dropped to a whisper. But why? Dr. Bell met her eyes. "You already know the answer. The same reason she says your sister mustn't be disturbed. Because she doesn't want anyone waking up." As dusk settled over St. Martin, Amelia and Dr. Bell returned to 63 Barrow Street. According to a notice pinned to the chapel door, Clara Duvall had left for Baton Rouge to attend a healing summit for the Women of Grace, leaving the house supposedly empty. They didn't bother knocking. Dr. Bell carried a lantern and his black doctor's bag. Amelia brought nothing but determination. The front door was locked, but the cellar door behind the house stood ajar. The wood groaned as they stepped inside, and a wave of thick, sweet perfume rolled over them, not rot, but something worse. The basement stretched beneath the whole house, divided into 3 sections. The first was ordinary shelves of preserves, jars of sugar, sacks of beans. But the second chamber was something else entirely. Glass bottles lined the walls, each labeled in a careful hand, Anise Valerian Angelica Laudanum. A long wooden table stood at the center, covered in oilcloth and arranged with dried petals, dark powders, and bundles of herbs. Above it hung a cross made not of wood, but of dried vines, bound with red thread. "This isn't medicine," Dr. Bell murmured. "It's theater." Amelia's eyes caught a small wooden box filled with letters, dozens of them, some addressed to former guests, others written by Clara herself. One envelope bore Lenora's name. Inside was a note written in perfect imitation of her sister's hand. "Dear Amelia, all is well. I feel lighter every day. Please don't worry if you don't hear from me for a while. Clara says I'm close to something beautiful." Dr. Bell read over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. She was writing their letters, keeping up the illusion. Amelia didn't answer. She had already noticed the narrow hallway at the back of the room and started toward it. The air grew colder as they entered the 3rd chamber. The stone floor gleamed under the lantern light, and against the far wall stood 7 long metal containers, each fitted with clasps. Dr. Bell opened the nearest one. Inside lay a middle-aged man in a black suit and clerical collar. His face waxy, his lips blue, his hands folded as if in prayer. Preserved Bell said quietly, "Some kind of embalming fluid. They've been here for weeks." They opened 2 more. a nurse with rosary beads bound around her hands, a preacher clutching a hymnal to his chest. Every one of them peaceful, dressed as if for a final sermon. Each box bore a small card with a name, date of arrival, and date of departure. When Amelia found Lenora's name, she nearly collapsed until she saw the final line was blank. "She's still alive," she whispered. Then came the sound. Footsteps overhead, slow, deliberate, unmistakably human. The front door creaked open and shut. Clara Duvall had come home. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The click of a lock, the soft tread of shoes across wooden floors. It was all too calm. Amelia turned down the lantern's flame. Dr. Bell tightened his grip on the useless medical bag. Then her voice floated through the boards, gentle and conversational. "I know you're down there." A pause, then Dr. Bell. "Miss Kittredge, I saw your footprints in the garden path. I wondered how long it would take before someone came looking." The basement door creaked open, spilling a thin blade of golden light down the steps. Her silhouette appeared, white dress, silver hair, a shadow stretching across the wall. "You've seen my work," she said softly, "and now you think I'm a monster." She began descending, humming a slow hymn that twisted strangely in the stone air. Amelia guided Dr. Bell backward toward the embalming chamber, the lantern flickering over pale, silent faces. Clara reached the floor, her lamplight dancing across her calm, kind face. "You must understand," she said. "They came to me broken in pain, in despair. And here they found rest. That's what I give them. Rest." "You drugged them," Dr. Bell said flatly. "I freed them," Clara replied. "They didn't ask for that," he said. Her head tilted. "Didn't they? You think people come here for life? They come because they're tired. Because they want peace, and I give it." She walked past them, trailing her fingers along the open caskets. Reverend Kenny prayed every night for relief. Sister Melrose wept in her sleep. Brother Eli begged for rest. I answered their prayers. "Where is my sister?" Amelia demanded. Clara's voice softened. "Lenora is safe, resting. I want to see her." "She's not ready," Clara said gently. "If you wake her too soon, you'll only bring her pain. She dreams of beautiful things now, children laughing, golden rivers, wings of light." "You're not God," Amelia whispered. Clara smiled faintly. "No, but I listen better than he does." That was when Dr. Bell moved, slipping past her up the stairs. Clara turned the lamplight flaring in her hand, but she didn't chase him. Instead, she looked back at Amelia. "You shouldn't have come here alone," she said. "I didn't," Amelia shot back. Clara's voice lowered. "You think he'll find her? Maybe if he hurries? If she hasn't gone too deep?" "If you touch him, I won't," Clara said, "but I'll warn you. Once a soul chooses to sleep, waking is cruelty." Then she turned and climbed the stairs, her light fading into shadow. Amelia waited until the last footstep vanished, then ran. She hurried through the narrow hall, past the bottles and the still faces, up into the house above. The air grew heavier with each step, thick with perfume and something unseen. When she reached the kitchen, the lantern light revealed everything in eerie perfection. The kettle still steaming, the chairs neatly arranged, the air unnaturally still. "Dr. Bell," she called softly. No answer. She stepped into the hallway and froze. The house had changed. The walls looked the same, but the length of the hall was wrong, stretched, unfamiliar. 10 steps should have led her to the stairs, but the hall kept going. The wallpaper seemed to pulse, and ahead of her new corridors appeared narrow, numbered doors, lining both sides. 3, 5, 7, 9. She tried one. Locked. Behind her, the air shifted like someone exhaled in her ear. She turned nothing. The hallway seemed to breathe. The numbers changed. And then she heard it, a voice low and rhythmic chanting in a language half remembered from hymns. It came from the last door. She pressed her ear to it and caught fragments of Latin and then her name. Amelia. She spun around. At the far end of the corridor stood Clara Duvall, dressed in white, untouched by dust or time, her hands folded serenely. "Did you really think the house would let you take her?" she asked. Amelia's throat went dry. The walls seemed to close in. And for the first time, she understood the house wasn't built for healing. It was built for keeping. Amelia asked where Lenora was, and Clara said the final room, adding that the straight path would never find it, so Amelia ignored her and pushed through the last door anyway. The handle burned with cold, and a closet-sized chamber opened onto shelves of jars, holding a lock of hair, a rosary, a wedding band, scraps of cloth. Even a sealed note, while a broken-faced preacher sat in a chair whispering his thin chant, and a full congregation of preserved bodies stood along the walls in their Sunday best. Amelia slammed the door and ran as the corridor bent and reworked itself. Numbers flipping backward until a familiar scent stopped her, short lemongrass and vanilla and the powder her sister always wore. Inside the dim room, Lenora lay warm but ghost-pale in a white gown stitched with tiny blue forget-me-nots, breathing shallow and steady. Amelia touched her face and begged her to wake, but the door clicked behind her, and Clara stepped in calm, as ever saying Lenora was dreaming and chose to rest. Amelia called it a prison. Clara called it mercy and said Lenora had come shattered after the school fire and begged to forget. Amelia stood her ground, saying pain did not give anyone the right to steal a life. Clara's composure wavered as she spoke of her own losses and of learning the craft that let her end suffering, then insisted she only reflected what people already wanted. Amelia lifted Lenora, determined to take her, and demanded something to bring her back safely. Clara handed over a blue glass vial and warned that without it, Lenora might wake screaming, and that sooner or later, Amelia would return her, because the world always finishes what it starts. Amelia refused the prophecy and carried her sister through the shifting halls, past numbered doors, and the silent congregation until the air turned honest again. Belle met them at the kitchen, shaken, and scraped from climbing out a window after finding the front door locked. They hurried through the garden night air and took shelter at his vine-shadowed cottage where he drew the curtains. Set up a cot, mixed a bitter tonic, and said the fight was no longer just chemical, but in the mind. Hours crawled by until close to midnight. Lenora stirred, blinked, and asked if it was still morning, then spoke of a field of long grass and falling stars, and of hearing Amelia far away. When asked why she was pulled out, she said she had been home. Pressed for memory, she remembered Clara helping her forget, and said the dreams had soothed the screams and the blood on her tongue, things Amelia had never known. Amelia told her about the forged letters and the bodies below, but Lenora only whispered that the others were finished with their burdens, and that in her dreams she had seen their mother and the children from the school and the boy from the fire, and that forgiveness had met her there. Dr. Bell said whatever peace she felt was stitched with drugs and lies, and that she had nearly died. Lenora answered that maybe that would have been easier. Wind worried the vines outside while the lamp guttered low, and as Lenora drifted back to sleep with words from another place on her lips, Amelia stood at the window and realized that saving a life and saving a soul do not always point in the same direction, and for the first time, she felt doubt. Amelia stood in the garden, clutching the yellowed photograph, as Clara Duvall regarded her with the faint, knowing calm of someone who had already written the ending. "You weren't supposed to go down there," Clara said, her voice smooth as still water. Amelia took a step forward, her breath sharp in the morning heat. What is that place? What did you open? Clara didn't blink. It's not what I opened, she said. It's what I kept from closing. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy and unreal. Amelia held up the photo. This was taken in 1879. You look exactly the same. Are you even human? Clara's eyes softened, and for a moment she looked almost pitying. I was, she said quietly. Once. I was born Clara Duvall, but names are like skin. They wear out, they peel away, and what's underneath is something older. Amelia's hand trembled around the photo. Older than what Clara smiled faintly. Older than pain, older than the need to end it. Do you know what happens to grief when no one tends to it? Miss Kittredge, it rots. It festers until it devours everything it touches. I became what grief needed me to be, a keeper of what people couldn't carry anymore. You mean their souls? Their suffering? Clara corrected softly. They gave it freely. I never took what wasn't offered. And the bodies in your cellar, the people embalmed and buried under your house. Resting, Clara said simply, you think death is cruelty, but life is the knife that never stops cutting. The air between them shimmered faintly, the ground beneath Amelia's feet vibrating with that same low hum she'd felt below. The scent of herbs and iron filled the garden, and somewhere far off, she thought she heard the faint sound of singing. You opened something down there, Amelia said. You let something through. No, Clara whispered. I let something stay. For a long moment, neither woman moved. Then Clara's expression softened. You could leave, you know. Take your sister, take your grief, go back to your world of polite silence and small prayers. But you'll come back. You'll come back when it starts to rot again. Amelia lowered the photograph, her voice trembling with rage and something dangerously close to understanding. You don't get to decide what people live with. Clara smiled faintly. Don't I? You came here because you couldn't live with what you lost. The hum deepened, rippling through the earth like breath. This place doesn't belong to me anymore, Clara said. It belongs to what they left behind. And soon it will call to someone else. She turned then, walking slowly toward the house, her white dress trailing through the grass. The morning light caught on the edges of her figure, and for a brief instant, she looked transparent, like a reflection caught in still water. Amelia stood rooted to the ground, the photograph trembling in her hand. The hum faded. The air stilled. When she looked up again, Clara Duvall was gone. Only the house remained silent, immaculate and waiting. They shed when the soul becomes too full, Clara said softly, her voice carrying that eerie calm that seemed to bend the world around it. Amelia stared at her, gripping the photograph so tightly it threatened to tear. What did you open in that house? She demanded. Clara's eyes glimmered faintly. I didn't open it. It was already open. I simply listened. Listened to the thing no one else wants to hear. The morning light caught her pupils in a way that made them look bottomless, reflecting something vast and ancient. Every soul you save, every burden you carry, Clara said, leaves something behind. Fear, grief, shame. These things don't vanish, they collect. I learned to gather them, to offer them where they belong. Amelia took a step back. You're feeding it. Clara's lips curved faintly. I'm satisfying it. It's using you. Is it? Clara asked. Or are we in agreement? Amelia's voice rose despite the stillness pressing down around them. You've murdered people. I've released them. You buried them alive. I listened when no one else would. The air seemed to stop moving. Even the cicadas fell silent. Clara's tone didn't change, but it carried a weight now that seemed to echo through the garden soil. Do you really think your sister would have survived another year in this world? Do you think the others would have endured another winter of loss, another season of plague and hunger? I gave them rest. You made that choice for them. They came to me, Clara said quietly. You think I lured them? I sent no invitations. I promised nothing. I opened my door and they walked through it. Amelia's hands shook, half from rage, half from something she couldn't name. You're lying. Clara stepped forward, her voice softening to a near whisper. You're tired too, Amelia. Not just from this, from everything. The endless worry, the endless noise, the weight that never lightens. Don't you see? You've been carrying the world like it owes you something, but it never does. It only asks for more. She was close now, close enough that Amelia could smell the faint scent of lavender and dust. I can take it, Clara whispered. The grief, the guilt, all of it. You don't have to fight anymore. And in that instant, Amelia felt it. The pull. The same invisible current she'd sensed in the house, the promise of quiet, of weight, lifted of an end to everything that hurt. It wasn't fear she felt. It was temptation. She saw Lenora lying still in the white bed, her lips blue but peaceful. She saw the metal cases, the singing man, the circle carved into the dirt. She saw what peace had cost. And when she opened her eyes again, her voice came out steady. No. Clara's face changed. Not with anger, but with something more, final disappointment. You're not ready, she said quietly. I never will be. Clara stepped back. Then go. But you'll come back. They always do. Amelia turned away. As she walked down the narrow garden path, the air grew still, the wind gone, the light dulling. She didn't look back, but she felt Clara's gaze on her, the whole way patient, knowing, unhurried. She wandered through the waking town in silence. Past the church whose bell had fallen quiet, past the bookstore, where she and Lenora used to sit over weak coffee and talk about poems, past the train depot, where strangers left without ever noticing one another. By the time she reached Dr. Bell's cottage, her legs ached, and her thoughts had circled themselves raw. Clara Duvall wasn't just dangerous. She wasn't even just human. She was something older, something that had worn humanity like a mask for far too long. Maybe once, centuries ago, she had been someone like Amelia, someone who cared too deeply and couldn't stop reaching into the quiet until the quiet reached back. By dusk, Dr. Bell met her at the porch. She's asking for you, he said. Lenora. He nodded. Inside, Lenora was sitting upright by the window. Pale but clear-eyed, her hands folded to hide a faint tremor. I remember more now, she said. There was another room, not the one you found me in. Deeper. Clara called it the hollow. Amelia's breath caught. I've seen it. She said it's where pain goes. To rest, Lenora whispered. That if you give enough of it, you make space for peace. She manipulated you, Amelia said. I felt it. Lenora shot back. Something real. It took the weight from me. I'm not saying it was right, but it worked. Amelia reached for her hand. You can't go back there. Lenora's eyes flicked toward the window. I'm not sure I have to. What do you mean? Lenora didn't answer at first. Her gaze was fixed on the fading light beyond the trees. There's someone here, she said finally. He was in the house too. I remember his face, one of the quiet ones. Lenora, he came to the gate just before you got back. I saw him. He smiled. Amelia felt her chest tighten. Who Lenora turned? Reverend Carney. Amelia froze. That's not possible. He's dead. "I saw him. I'm telling you," Lenora said. He was standing by the fence. The collar of his coat was torn. Dr. Bell entered, then a cup of tea shaking slightly in his hand. "That tear," he murmured. "It was in my report the night he vanished." Amelia turned to him. "You said his body was embalmed." "It was," Bell said quietly. "Then, what did she bring back?" He didn't answer. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. That night they didn't light the lamps. They sat together in the front room, shadows moving gently across the walls. No one spoke. No one slept. And just before midnight, a knock came at the door. Soft, measured, 3 times. Dr. Bell went first, peering through the lace curtain. Then he stepped back. His face drained of color. Amelia joined him. At the gate stood a man in a black coat and white collar. His hands clasped his skin pale as marble. His eyes were open, unblinking, and wrong. They didn't move. They only waited. Amelia's voice was barely a whisper. "He was supposed to be dead. Maybe he still is," Dr. Bell said. They didn't open the door. They didn't sleep. The man remained there motionless until the sky began to pale, and when the first light touched the horizon, he was gone. By morning, Dr. Bell was already dressed, his satchel packed with vials, notebooks, and a revolver. "She brought him back," he said. "You think it's really him?" "I don't know what it is," he replied, "but it remembers who it used to be." When Amelia told him about the hollow and the voice that spoke beneath the house, Bell nodded grimly. "There's a church," he said, "or what's left of one. She used to go there before the boarding house, before any of this. Maybe it's where it started." They left before noon, the sky heavy and unmoving. The path was nearly gone, half-eaten by moss and roots. What stood at the end of it barely resembled a church, sun-bleached wood-boarded windows, a steeple listing to one side, like it had forgotten how to stand. Inside, vines wound through the cracked boards. The air smelled of dust and forgotten hymns. Beneath the pulpit, they found a warped trap door. It took both of them to pry it open. A steep passage led down into darkness. The room below was small, circular, and silent. The shelves were lined with hand-bound books stitched in uneven thread. Melted candles clung to the floor in wax and puddles. In the center sat a stone basin crusted with something dark and dried. And across the far wall, nailed with rusted pins, were pages of handwritten scripture. Dr. Bell read aloud. "To those who wait in sorrow, I offer stillness. To those who burn in pain, I offer the hush. To those whose names have been buried, I offer return." "A reversed prayer," Amelia said quietly. He nodded, lifting another page. It was music staff lines, notes inked so heavily the paper bled. No words, no melody she recognized. The intervals bent strangely, notes leaning toward dissonance, toward something that felt like listening to silence itself. A hymn, not to God, but to what waited beneath the stillness. At the bottom of the page, written in small, cramped script, was a single instruction: to be sung only in the presence of the hollow. Neither Amelia nor Dr. Bell spoke at first. The air in the chapel cellar felt heavier, as though the words themselves had changed it. Finally, Dr. Bell said quietly, "There was a woman in Charleston around the war. A nurse. She used to hum to the dying low and slow. People said she made their passing easier." He paused, the lines of his face deepening. "But the ones who woke up, the ones who almost died, said the same thing." Amelia looked up. "What?" He met her eyes. She wasn't singing to them. She was singing to something else. Amelia turned back to the stone basin. The dried residue in its bowl looked black under the lantern light, and the sight of it made her throat close. "What if Clara isn't feeding it, just grief?" she whispered. What if she's summoning it or binding it? Or worse, Dr. Bell said, bargaining. They took what they could carry, 3 pages of the hymn, a torn fragment of a journal, and a small leather book written in cipher. By the time they climbed out of the chapel, the light above had dimmed unnaturally, a gray veil settling over the afternoon. The moment they stepped into the cottage, Amelia knew something was wrong. It wasn't silence that told her it was absence. The faint, familiar rhythm of Lenora's breathing behind a door, the scrape of her spoon against the bowl, the soft tapping of her fingers against the chair when she dreamed all of it was gone. Lenora, she called. No answer. The doors were locked, the windows latched. No sign of struggle. The air itself felt too still. On the kitchen table lay a single envelope, thick paper unsealed. Her name written in that same graceful, haunting script. Amelia. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a short note written in soft black ink. She came willingly. I asked nothing. She offered everything. I do not force. I do not beg. But I do invite. If you wish to hear the last song, come to the place where sleep is deepest. Come home. See. A single sprig of dried lavender fell from the fold. Dr. Bell read it over her shoulder. His face hardened. She didn't take her, he said. Lenora went. Why, Amelia whispered. After everything. Because whatever Clara offers, he said quietly, is more comforting than the truth. Lenora's grief didn't die. It just changed shape. And Clara knows how to speak to that shape. Amelia stared at the letter. The place where sleep is deepest. She didn't need directions. She knew exactly what it meant. That night they packed. Lanterns, rope, tonics. Bell took the hymn pages. Amelia took the photograph, the one from 1879, with Clara standing inside the circle. The house on Barrow Street waited for them. The iron gate was open. The front door stood ajar. No sound came from within, only the smell of lavender smoke and something faintly metallic. The air grew colder as they descended past the cellar through halls that hadn't existed before. Clara had opened new paths, older, rawer stone, slick with moisture and carved with marks that glimmered like veins. Somewhere ahead, music echoed. The hymn. The one written in impossible intervals, the one that bent the air when read aloud. Dozens of voices now sang it, some near, some impossibly far, fused together in a harmony that wasn't quite human. The tunnel ended at a stone archway carved with glowing symbols. Beyond it lay a vast circular chamber, and in its center, a still black pool with candles floating on the surface. Lenora stood at the far edge, dressed in white, her braided hair tied with twine. Her lips moved softly, her voice part of a haunting song. Clara stood beside her, calm and radiant in the candlelight. I'm glad you came, Clara said. Dr. Bell raised his revolver. Let her go. She's not held, Clara replied. She's choosing, Lenora Amelia shouted. Look at me. But her sister didn't stop singing. She doesn't hear you, Clara said gently. She hears them, the ones you left behind, the ones she left behind. They're answering through the hollow. If this is some ritual, stop it, Amelia cried. Whatever you've called, it's not holy. Clara smiled faintly. It's not holy or evil. It's just listening. The ground trembled. The pool rippled. Beneath the surface, faint lights appeared, then more, until hundreds of eyes blinked open in the dark. Lenora faltered, terrified. Amelia, she whispered. I don't want to be here. Clara's voice hardened. No. You made your choice. Lenora stumbled back. Amelia ran to her. Dr. Bell aimed the gun. Get away from her. Clara didn't move. You don't understand, she said. You're breaking the thread. The only thing we're breaking, Amelia said, is your control. Lenora collapsed into her sister's arms, sobbing. I thought it was peace, but it's not. It's hungry. The water swelled as something massive stirred below. Dr. Bell fired into the air, but nothing changed. The candles began to spin, then went out, leaving only a blue glow rising from beneath. Amelia saw it then, an enormous eye, lidless and alive. It wasn't looking at them. It was seeing through them. Clara dropped to her knees, whispering words in an ancient tongue. The walls cracked. Voices filled the chamber, thousands of them, crying, pleading, calling names. Amelia heard her parents, the children from Lenora's school, every ghost she thought she'd buried. "Make it stop," Lenora screamed. "Shut it down," Amelia shouted. "I can't," Clara gasped. "It's feeding." Dr. Bell grabbed the hymn pages and threw them into the water. They burst into blinding blue-white light. The pool shook, shrieking in silence. Faces surfaced, then disappeared, replaced by ghostly hands reaching up for Clara. She didn't resist. "Rest," she whispered as they pulled her under. The water went still. The light died. Silence returned. Clara Duvall was gone. They turned to leave, but the tunnel had changed. The walls shifted, the air thickened. A brass door appeared ahead, marked with an L. Lenora opened it and found herself inside her old classroom. Desks, chalk dust, sunlight through smoke. Then came the screams, and a small boy in the haze. "You left me," he said. Lenora wept, denying it, but the door slammed shut. Silence followed. They moved on. Another door marked A. A. Amelia opened it. Her childhood bedroom. Her father sat on the bed, face tired and sad. "You always asked for too much," he said. "You wanted the world to stop for you. You never listened," she said. "Neither did you." The room vanished. Dr. Bell steadied her. "It's testing us," he said. They kept walking until they found a staircase. Sunlight poured from above. They climbed and emerged into the front hall of the Barrow Street house. Morning light streamed through the dusty windows. The rooms were empty. Clara's books, herbs, and jars all gone. The garden outside was overgrown. The gate rusted shut. They left St. Martin within days. Dr. Bell stayed behind. Their letters to him were never answered. The house was said to have been torn down. By autumn, Lenora lived quietly with relatives in Vermont. Amelia moved into a small apartment above a library, teaching and trying to forget. But memories have a way of finding their way back. One morning, a letter arrived on her doorstep. No stamp, no sender, just her name. Amelia. Inside was a short note. "The door is still open. You only thought you closed it. The hollow doesn't take without giving, and now it waits. But not for me." A photograph was tucked inside. It showed a child standing at the gate of the Barrow Street property. The weeds were gone. The house stood whole again, sunlight glinting off its windows. And in the upstairs window, Clara's face, pale, smiling. Amelia turned the photo over. On the back, written in blue ink, "She's just begun singing."